Hey everybody, welcome back to Conejo Valley Visionaries, your resource for hearing the inspiring stories behind your favorite local businesses. I'm your host, Christina Denstead. In today's episode, you'll hear from our community-nominated Season 4 guest, Dr. Bieta Kia of Bieta Kia Physical Therapy in Westlake Village. In their nomination for Bita, one listener wrote, "She is amazing and life-changing for so many." Bita is a physical therapist that takes a total body, hands-on approach to addressing dysfunction. Bita shares her journey into physical therapy, what led her to start her own practice, shout out to prior guest Tyler Cusick of Westlake Yoga Co., and how her patient-first, holistic approach helps professional athletes and weekend warriors throughout the Conejo Valley. If you enjoy this episode and find value in the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and rating. This helps more people find the podcast, and therefore each story can reach more folks in the Conejo Valley. Please enjoy this conversation with our listener-nominated Season 4 guest, Dr. Bieta Kia. Hi, Bita. Welcome to Conejo Valley Visionaries. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I am so excited because you were the listener-nominated guest for Season 4. And meaning that when I asked for submissions from the Conejo Valley Visionaries community, you were the most requested guest for Season 4. And I am thrilled to connect and help share out your story with our listeners. So thank you so much for that.
That's amazing. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, what I always like to do is go back to the beginning and understand, what did you want to be when you grew up, and what did you then study in school?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be somewhere in medicine and athletics. My family always grew up playing soccer and being, active, and we have a lot of people in medicine as well. So I knew I wanted to do something in the combination of the two. I never really knew what that was. And I studied kinesiology, exercise science, and for my undergraduate degree. And then from there, I started kind of looking into different options of what that would look like. And physical therapy just kind of ended up being that happy medium of having something with that autonomy of where I can make decisions for my patients and help athletes and be in medicine. So it felt like the perfect combination of everything I wanted to do. And so I kind of just ran with it.
Wow. So you knew from pretty early on that you wanted to take this sort of medicine route. Were you also an athlete growing up?
I was. I used to play soccer growing up, track, volleyball, and I stopped a little bit into once I finished high school, I stopped, but I've always kind of been involved in athletics in some sort, whether it was intramural sports or just for fun. One of my biggest hobbies is exercising, working out. So it just kind of made sense for me. And it was something that I really, really enjoy. And so I think finding the path of medicine and athletics was something, just obviously as I kind of got older and started education and school, that I found something that I could be effective, helpful, and also something that I enjoy. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the great marriage of all the things. Did you ever have an injury when you were growing up that you needed to get physical therapy support with?
I actually did not, but one of the big reasons why physical therapy kind of fell in my lap and I learned about it was because my oldest brother actually played soccer pretty competitively, and he got injured and he blew out his knees playing soccer, and he had to have a pretty big knee surgery. And I kind of went through his rehab with him, and that's when it really opened up my eyes of what physical therapy really was, what it meant, and how it really changed his life. So from there, I kind of started pursuing it as far as shadowing and looking at different options, and really enjoyed it.
And can you explain what physical therapy is? I mean, that sounds so ridiculous, but I sometimes am hesitant to explore that route. And I'm so curious, what it is more broadly speaking, and what your sort of version of it is.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, one of the other reasons I chose physical therapy as a career was that it's such a broad profession. You can work with geriatrics, you can work with pediatrics, you can work in the hospital setting. You can really, truly change who you work with and what you do. In a traditional physical therapy description, if you go to a traditional rehab model, it's a lot of injuries and strengthening, right? For example, you have back pain, you may or may not need back surgery, and you're going to do either conditioning prior to surgery and therefore after as well for strengthening to get you back on your feet and doing the things that you need to be doing or you enjoy doing. As far as that's more of the traditional rehab, putting it in a very, layman's terms.
Yeah.
And then there is specialties. There is sports, orthopedic, geriatrics and everything else that I kind of mentioned before. And for me specifically, I specialize in manual therapy. So my approach is very, very different than the traditional rehab model. I was very blessed and lucky that out of school, I got hired on by an amazing company that did extensive training for every staff member that came on. We had to do about 6 to 8 weeks of training before we could even put our hands on patients, which was phenomenal. That doesn't really exist out there. And so I was able to kind of find my specialty and what I enjoyed and what I found to really help people. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we're doing this profession for, right? And so my specialty is manual therapy. So it kind of starts backwards. It's the best way I can describe it. Okay. So for example, when you have an injury of any sort, there is muscles, ligaments, fascia, tendon, and joints that are involved. Traditional physical therapy tends to focus on the range of motion, strength, and getting you back into those activities. But I focus on kind of a total body approach of how the muscles are moving. Are they too tight? Are they too loose? Are they really holding on to, trauma and not functioning the way that they're supposed to? And if we don't get those tissues nice and healthy, we're kind of building strength and range on unhealthy tissues. And so in my belief system is that if we don't get the tissues healthy, we're just going to be doing the cycle over and over again, right? So you get better, whether it's you just kind of let it go and it started to feel better, or you're doing some sort of therapy for it. And then you get to a point where then one more thing happens and the injury kind of starts over again. Yeah. So my goal as a physical therapist is to not only get to the root cause of what's causing this pain, especially if it's continuing to happen over and over again, and also to correct kind of the structures, correct the things that are really the solid foundation of what builds our body and how our muscles work and how our joints work, and then give you the tools that you need that to keep that, right? So you don't have to see me every month or every couple of, weeks or whatever it may be, that you have the tools to kind of manage it a little bit on your own and that you can get back to your life in that same manner without having to have treatment consecutively. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's interesting. So, I did notice with not only folks that had recommended you for the podcast, but also in your testimonials, this sort of like 6-week approach, almost like, you're there to really try to solve it in this kind of concise way and not necessarily keep people on forever. And when you're thinking about sort of addressing that core issue, what does that look like in more practical terms? How would somebody come in? Like, what would maybe be their first appointment with you, and how would you sort of analyze what the core issue is?
Absolutely. So the biggest part of the puzzle, it's almost like a puzzle, right? Of trying to kind of put all the pieces together. And the most important part for me is that initial visit and that subjective of being able to hear someone's full story. And to go backwards a little bit, that's one of the main reasons I started my practice, because little by little, I was losing that time with people. I wasn't able to sit down and really hear what's happening, what's underneath kind of just the pain and what caused it and what initiated it. So that's kind of the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I like to be able to figure it out at that point of just talking before I even put my hands on patients. I like to have kind of a hypothesis of what's happening, what is the underlying diagnosis, if you will, and what is the actual medical diagnosis of what's happening and what is my first step to fix it. So almost always, I would say 90% of the time, no one comes in with just one joint or one thing wrong, right? And we're human, everything attaches to each other, and that makes sense, right? So, again, why traditional physical therapy of you can only focus on one body part at a time does not make sense to me as a physical therapist. And I think the system in itself needs a lot of change, but that's a big reason why I find that the subjective piece is a huge piece of that puzzle. And then from there, we'll find one thing and then we'll be like, okay, whatever's bugging you the most, whatever's limiting you the most, let's focus on that. Once we get that kind of figured out, things feeling a little bit better, we kind of build on that. So, like I said before, originally, I want to get the tissues healthy. I want them moving like they should be. I want them, in a healthy orientation. And then from there, if it's range of motion that we're limited in, we build on that. If it's strength we're limited on, we build on that. And we kind of progress. But yeah, my goal is at about 6 to 8 visits to be at about 80 to 90% better. It's an aggressive goal as a physical therapist, but I thrive on that. I think just my patients, I think, would agree that I become very, very involved, and it's my goal just as much as theirs, right? To kind of get them back into whatever their goal is and whatever they want to get back to. I get really, really invested, and it's a part of kind of what I do. It's not just, I'm not treating just the knee, just the hip, just the back. I'm treating that person, that human, and it involves so much more of just their pain, if that makes sense.
It does. And I do think that there's like a more openness to this idea of a full body approach
Mm-hmm.
to medicine just overall. And it feels short-sighted that we didn't see that before. But
Mm-hmm.
it's great that practitioners like yourself are helping us better understand our full body.
Absolutely. It's key.
Yeah. Are you noticing any particular, excuse me, like kind of common injuries that are sticking out right now, especially here in the Conejo Valley, that are, maybe the majority of your patients are coming in for?
Yeah, so I kind of see trends. It
Yeah.
changes a little bit. I am in the same building as Westlake Yoga Company. And so I'm lucky enough to treat so many of the, clients and employees and everyone that's there. So I do treat quite a bit of yoga, Pilates type people, athletes. And so it's not necessarily a specific injury, but I see a lot of kind of pelvis, low back, hip stuff, just from the mobility side of things. And I am newer to California, so I'm not from here. And one of the coolest injuries, I should say, I mean, if there is a cool injury, is horseback riders. I love, I've been treating a lot of those. And I think it's something I have never treated before. And it's just very new to me, which I love. It's no different than any other athlete or any other patient and how I would approach their injury. But I'm learning a lot more
What does
about.
that look like for a horseback rider? I wouldn't think about that.
Yeah, so it's a lot of that like bouncing motion and a lot of tightness in the hips from the way they hold on, and a lot of mid back stuff that just from like pulling and the way they have to move. So again, the treatment approach is not necessarily different, but I think the athletic side of things, I've just never really treated horseback riders, so it's really, really cool to me. But I also treat a lot of like golfers and a little bit of everything. I treat quite a bit of younger athletes as far as dance and soccer, and that tends to be more like knees and hips and ankles. But I'm lucky enough that I truly get to see everything. And I love that because it keeps me on my toes, and I'm able to kind of change the pace a little bit instead of treating the same thing over and over again. I don't see as much of post-operation type patients
Okay.
where I am right now. So it's more of like a wellness approach, or more people that just want to maintain their wellness, and weekend warriors, if you will. People that are like, okay, now I don't have pain anymore and I want to keep it that way. So they come regularly to see me to keep things at bay and avoid kind of that up and down fluctuation of their pain and symptoms.
That makes sense. And that's what I was going to ask. Like, at what point should somebody pursue going to physical therapy? Is it preventative? Like, or what point is the pain? Like, when do you do that in your steps of sort of addressing an issue?
Yeah, and I think that's also the cool thing that about medicine changing so much, especially in our area. People are open to that. People are open to putting themselves first and focusing on their wellness and their, goals and journey as athletes, and whether that is a weekend warrior or if they're truly, on a team. And so I think a lot of my patients get to a point, most people start with some sort of discomfort, not necessarily a full blown injury. It might not be that way, but something hurts, something's bothering them, something's getting in the way of them doing the things that they love. And so once they come in, usually, as I mentioned, my goal is to get them, something better at every visit. So whether it's the intensity, frequency, or, symptoms wise, something is better at every visit. That's my goal. And so usually when that kind of dissipates and they can get back to their everything they want to do, I usually suggest to them, it's up to you whether you want to, continue this pace, or you can space it out a little bit, get back to your normal routine and come in once every month, once every 2-3 months, whatever you find that is beneficial for you and possible for you. That will keep things kind of at bay. And I have patients that I've seen for 3 years now regularly that come, every month or every couple of weeks. I also have people that just kind of come once every, 3-4 months. And then something starts to like creep back up and they start to have a little bit more discomfort, and then they kind of pick it back up again. So everyone's a little bit different. I usually let patients kind of decide. I'll make recommendations, but I let them decide of what the frequency and how often they want to be there, depending how it makes them feel and how much improvement they see.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're not from California originally. When and why did you decide to move out to the Conejo Valley area?
So we moved out here June of 2018 from Minnesota. So both my husband and I are from there. My whole family is still there. My husband's family is here. So that was part of the reason we wanted to be out here. They weren't in Conejo Valley at the time, but now slowly most of them are here. And so it's funny. I don't really know why, but my husband and I both separately have always wanted to live in California. And for whatever reason, it never really panned out until 2018. And at the time, I was working for a company that wanted me to, I was helping them open clinics kind of everywhere. And they were looking into opening clinics out in Conejo Valley in Thousand Oaks. And they asked me to be the one to do it. And so about 2 years in negotiations and things kind of falling into place. And unfortunately, it kind of fell through at the last second. But now I kind of see how, everything happens for a reason. And at the time, my husband and I just decided, we're going to do it. So we had looked in Thousand Oaks, we had looked in the area, I had done all my licensing and all the, my due diligence. And so we decided, and at the time we didn't have kids, so it was easier to get up and move. And so we did that and we moved out here, and I started with various practices and orthopedic practices. And then about March of 2022, Tyler actually really motivated me and encouraged me to kind of go out on my own. And so I slowly did. And in August of 2022, I quit my big girl job and started my own practice. And little by little, I started with like 2 patients in Westlake Yoga Company. And I was in a room there. And then I slowly kind of grew into my practice now.
Wow, that's so incredible. And I love hearing that Tyler, who is the owner of Westlake Yoga Co., was important force of kind of pushing you to make that change. What's surprised you the most about running your own practice?
Oh man. It has been something I've wanted to do for a long time. Now, was it something I thought I was going to do with a 10-month-old and right after COVID? Probably not. The timing of it was, things, like I said, things kind of happen how they're supposed to and how it's meant to be. But it's been amazing. I wouldn't change a thing. I think surprising is the second I kind of let go of all pressures and things kind of just fell into place, and I am lucky enough that majority of my practice is word of mouth. And so I don't do much for marketing, and my patients refer their loved ones and they trust me enough to do that. And I so appreciate that. So I think that's been the amazing and more surprising thing. I always thought I had to work so hard, to build my practice and build patients. And it's been great because I've been able to gain the trust of my patients who send their loved ones, and it just kind of keeps growing naturally.
That's amazing. What about entrepreneurship or starting your own practice had excited you when you said you've been wanting to do this for a while?
Yeah. So my previous job when I was in Minnesota, I worked a lot on the corporate side of things as well as in the clinic with patients. So I was blessed enough to learn so much about that. I was able to help them grow and open clinics and kind of run the business side of things as well. So I think the education from that really gave me the confidence to be able to do it, and be able to kind of slowly build. And I think that's the big piece, that I didn't put this huge pressure on myself of doing everything all at once. So I just started with a couple patients, and then little by little, I did my website. I did, business cards and little things like that, to kind of build from there. And yeah, so that was kind of the challenging part, but
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm curious, like, what has been the most challenging? It sounds like, I actually was at a yoga class this morning at Westlake Yoga Go, and the one of the sort of takeaways that Marissa, the teacher, had shared was, clarity comes from letting go of control and like surrendering. It sounds like maybe that was part of your process or part of your journey here. So, what having just sort of been able to grow your practice by word of mouth, has there been something that's been the most challenging in that?
yeah, I think the challenging part for me is finding that balance too. And there's two sides of it. It's amazing that I've been able to have that balance, being able to pick my own hours, and not having to really answer to anybody else, which is very new and amazing. But also finding that balance of, I'm a one man show, so I do it all. And so, as far as scheduling and reaching out and the business side of things, billing, and all the things that come into play of having your own business, of finding a time where I finally had to get a business phone because I was always, my personal cell phone. I was answering messages in all times of day and night. And so I think that's my biggest challenge of trying to find a balance and boundary, if you will, of business and home life, and kind of separating the two when appropriate to do so. But again, as a, business owner, you can never do enough. So I think that's the hard piece that I'm learning as I go.
Yeah. What's your vision for your business?
Oh yeah, I've always wanted to be on my own and do my own thing, and it's just the doors keep opening and it just gets better and better, and it's amazing. Down the road, I think right now I have a 1 year old and a 4 year old. So they take a lot of my time. And so my goal down the road, I don't know, 5, 10 years, I would love to open like a wellness center. My background is a big part of that collaboration of working with different professions in the wellness industry, and I believe that there's enough for everybody, right? And working together and getting to like a result at the same time of being able to help people. And I would love to have a place where that exists. And I know we have quite a few of those as well, but I would love to even expand more on having, chiropractic care, physical therapy care, acupuncture, nurse practitioners, whatever it may be, and personal trainers. And so when you get to a point where you're like, I want to see this person, everything's kind of on site, but that's going to be years down the road.
I'm curious, what's the difference between manual physical therapy and chiropractic?
So physical therapy and chiropractic, the biggest difference would be chiropractors do a lot of adjustments and manipulations and that kind of stuff. Manual therapy per se, especially what I say I specialize in, it's hands-on body work. So there's different techniques that I use, but it's releasing fascia and muscles and tension and so forth. So it's a lot of not necessarily adjusting joints. I do manipulations and mobilizations on the physical therapy side of things. But it's a lot of like active release, a lot of like trigger points and releasing tension. We tend to hold a lot of tension and pain with trauma or not, and injuries in our muscles. And so until that releases, the tissues and the nervous system and the muscles can't really function appropriately. So when I say manual therapy, it's a lot of more muscular tension release type body work.
Got it. Is there a particular patient or story of somebody you've worked with that has been just really transformative or has really stuck with you over the years?
Yeah, I have a few, but there's one that really has stuck with me, and it's something that was earlier on in my career, and I've learned so much about it, or so much from that experience. It was a gentleman in his mid 30s, and he couldn't walk into the clinic. He was in so much pain. He basically crawled into the clinic, and I had him face down, and I was working on his back and doing everything that I do now. And it was a disc injury, and he could not get off the table
Wow.
at the end of the session after our 45 minutes, however long the session was. And I ended up actually canceling my entire afternoon and working on him for 2.5 hours. And I'm lucky enough that at the time, the clinic and the management that I had allowed me to do that, because that does not exist either. And his biggest goal was he wants to get off that table to go pick up his kids from the bus stop. And I will never, ever forget that. And I basically, at one point, we got him on the ground, and I was on the ground working on his back to try to a lot of it was muscle spasms from, the pain. The body goes into this fight or flight mode, and he couldn't get out of that. So it was a lot of not necessarily treating just the muscles in the body, but trying to get the nervous system to calm down to allow him to be able to get out of this pain cycle. But he got up, he got his kids from the bus stop, and all was good. And I still this is probably 9 years ago, and I still keep in touch with that patient. One big thing I learned is when you have disc patients, you do not lay them on their stomach for that long of a period, because that is a chance that they can get, have so much more pain because it aggravates it sometimes. And I don't know if that was the only reason, but anyways, it's a memory that has stuck with me. But I have a lot of those key components of like, this is what I want to get back to. And like I said, I get really, really invested in my patients and their progress. So I have quite a few stories of what they wanted to come in for and what the goal they wanted to get back to, and that we were able to do that for them.
That must feel so incredible.
Yeah, it does. It does. It kind of solidifies, your purpose, right? Like your goal of you're doing this for a reason. And truthfully, that was the big reason I started my practice. I started to lose sight of that in a practice where it was insurance based, and the insurance and the company was telling me how to treat, how long to treat, what to bill. And I was starting to lose sight of why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I enjoy what I do. And so there was no other way than to start my own and being able to treat patients how I see fit and how I think they deserve to be treated. So that was kind of a big reason of being able to start my practice and treat how I think I should be.
I love that. What do you think about starting your practice out here in the Conejo Valley? Do you think it's a good place for practitioners or just businesses in general?
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's this community is wonderful, and it's small but big, right? And it's this whole word of mouth and people referring everyone else just solidifies how connected everybody is and how involved they are in their own wellness journey and wanting to be better humans, right? And so I love that. And it's such an athletic, active group, especially in this area. And it's taken me, I lived in Minnesota for so long and I had my people, right? So who I would refer to and all of that. And it feels good to finally say that I'm getting there to the point where I have my knit group of people that I refer to, that I trust, and that I know put patients first. And this community is wonderful because of that too.
I was thinking about that before our conversation, just how I don't know the stats, but I imagine this area is very highly active, at least based on
Mhm.
most of my interviews with business owners. Their favorite thing to do out here is go hiking or
Yes.
utilize the outdoor space. And that's obviously a big part of the community. There's a plethora of fitness clubs and all that kind of stuff. So I imagine you're not short on potential for better or for worse. I
Yes.
mentioned in previous episodes, I personally have had pickleball injuries. I imagine that is something you're seeing, or people are coming in with those types of
Mhm.
things. So, yeah, it's an active group who also needs help, kind of, especially probably our age demographic too. I've noticed as I've gotten older, things take a little bit longer, and maybe
Mhm.
having somebody, a real professional support you is probably a good idea.
Absolutely. And again, it's like it's a broad range. Like my youngest patient right now is 9, and my oldest patient is 89. So I see everything and everyone, and it kind of ranges whether it's high level athletes or just, people that just want to be able to go up and down the stairs without having creaky knees or pain, right? So it's a kind of a broad range, but they all kind of have that in common, that they want to stay active. They want to keep going and they want to enjoy life and spread the sunshine that we have and be outside and do the things they enjoy.
Yeah. Okay, I have a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah.
The first one, is there one tip that you give the majority of your patients that come in, or even somebody from a preventative before they come to see you, some practical tip of how to keep their full body healthy?
Yeah, one of the big things I think is just keep moving. And it depends, right? But most people is just keep moving and keep doing things. I'm a little bit different in the realm of advice where most people would say, okay, if that hurts, maybe stop doing that. But I personally, if I had an injury or there's something I really enjoy and it hurts me and someone tells me to stop doing it, that I wouldn't stop doing it. And so
Guilty of that too, yes.
so that's kind of how I run my, business, and to help people, like, no, you enjoy running, you enjoy doing these activities and it keeps you going, keep going, but maybe modify, be smart about it, right? The 3 ways of injury is too much, too soon, too fast. So that's kind of my biggest advice. So whether you're getting back into an activity or you're starting to ease into an activity, just slow your way into it, right? As humans, we like to get results fast. We like to do things fast and we like to just jump into things. And so that would be my biggest advice that I give people, whether they're transitioning out of physical therapy and getting back into the real world, or they're starting a new activity that they want to start pursuing. It's just don't do things too much, too soon, too fast.
I love that. What is your favorite thing to do out here in the Conejo Valley?
Oh man, there's a lot. We live kind of in a hilly area, and so before kids, my husband and I used to love going just road biking around and just see the area, and the challenges of the hills with all of that was something we were not used to. That's for sure. We haven't gone back into that with having young kids. It's hard to do that. So that is one of kind of my big goals to get back into that we really, really enjoy doing. But one thing I really want to start is pickleball. You mentioned it.
Okay.
I really want to start playing.
It's a fun one. We can go out on the courts. There's a lot of courts to be had out here, and there's also the previous episode was with Pickleball
Yeah.
Athletic Club, so there's indoor options when it's too hot. So we'll have to go out there and
Absolutely. I have to check that place out. I saw that. That looked
yeah.
amazing.
Okay, my last question for you is: what is one piece of advice you would offer to first-time entrepreneurs?
Give yourself some grace. It's the process is overwhelming, and there's so much to do. And I am a perfectionist in some ways, and I think I allowed to push that aside and to kind of do one step at a time. And I think that really helped me to focus on patient care, or whatever your business is, that comes first. That's the core essence of your business. Focus on that. All the little things around it will happen. It'll come to play when the time is right, right? So focus on kind of how you want to change the people that you're affecting, right? Who you're working with, whether it's patients or clients or whatnot. Focus on that, and then give yourself some grace in kind of the building and the ups and downs that comes with being an entrepreneur.
I love it. Excellent advice. This has been fantastic. Congratulations on what you've been able to build and being able to make your mark in this community. And can't wait to see how you continue to live out that vision.
Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed talking with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Conejo Valley Visionaries. If you like today's episode, make sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And don't forget to rate and review us. That's the best way to support the podcast. To enter our giveaways, learn about local events, and to find out more about each guest, follow at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram. If you want to share your visionary story on the podcast, send us an email. We are always open to guest nominations. Email conejovalleyvisionaries@gmail.com. This episode was produced by Christina Denstead and Justin K. Sloan. Conejo Valley Visionaries is edited by Justin K. Sloan and J. Sloan Productions.